Happy Tuesday. I can't believe it's been a week already since we chatted last, and here it is Tuesday. And my name is Floyd Punitz, President of Seventh-day Adventist Kinship International, and thank you for joining us for this Tuesdays with Ted video talk. In case this is your first time seeing this video, Tuesdays is a day that we have dedicated to talk with Ted Wilson, President of the administrative body of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. SDA Kinship is the international LGBTQIA plus affirming organization for the Adventist Church, and because Ted Wilson refuses to acknowledge our existence or even talk to us, we've created this weekly video series to chat with him. So thank you for joining us, and if you're watching us for the first time, as usual, put your video on pause for a second, grab yourself a beverage, a drink of some sort. It's kind of cool here where I am, and so I am drinking hot chocolate tonight for you. Yes, that is hot. So grab a beverage and let's talk a little bit. I'll be here when you come back. So anyway, hope you have grabbed that beverage, and let's talk a little bit. A couple weeks ago, we talked about families and friends, and we had our dear leaders, Carolyn and John Wilt, on with us, talking about Kinship's Families and Friends program, where we create a safe, supportive community and space for parents who have questions about their LGBTQIA plus loved ones, their children, their grandchildren, whatever it could be. And hopefully, if you haven't watched that, go back and check out that video. But today I want to talk a little bit about the history of our families and friends, because they are very important. Our allies are important. Just like you, Ted Wilson, won't speak to us directly. You won't acknowledge that we exist. I don't know if it's beneath your station to talk with a queer person or what it is. You have gay family members. Hopefully you speak with them, but you won't talk with or speak with anybody. You speak about us, you speak to us, but you don't speak with us. And so hopefully this video is one that you will listen to and get the message that you can't talk in a vacuum, that you need to actually speak with the constituents of your church that comprise more than 10% of the Adventist community. I remember my first kinship camp meeting was in the Portland, Oregon area at a beautiful location called Manuka. It was just on the Columbia River Gorge, not too far away from Multnomah Falls. I know some of you know that area well. And that very first camp meeting, it was my first experience to be with such a large group of LGBT Adventists, and there were some parents there, and I was curious. It was interesting to see parents. Some actually drove down from Canada to be with us, from the Vancouver area, I believe it was, and they were making bears for the community, for the LGBTQ community that was suffering from HIV in the Vancouver area. And it was interesting to see their caring and their love for their loved ones and how they were sticking their necks out, even though the church told them not to do that. A couple of years later, I remember HMS Richards Sr.'s daughter, Virginia Richards Kaysen, was there, and she talked about her two queer children who were also a part of SDA Kinship, and she shared with us how her heart as a mother went out, and she loved her children unconditionally, and that she knew that her father, HMS Richards Sr., also loved his children unconditionally, never condemned them for being gay, being queer, and just said, hey, God loves you just like everyone else. So that really warmed my heart. And a few years later, actually it was back in camp meeting there in Manuka, that I got acquainted with a lady, a wonderful inspiration, someone I grew to love very dearly, called Carol Grady. And I remember General Conference in Toronto, she had a booth called Someone to Talk to. and it was a booth for parents who wanted to talk with other parents about their LGBTQ children, loved ones. And that was the last general conference that we were allowed to actually be at. After that, your predecessors and you, Ted Wilson, have made sure that we are banned from any Adventist gatherings around the world without a presence and without a voice, which is very sad. But yeah, we got to talk with people, and they had no idea that there were actually queer people in the church. And yeah, it was quite enlightening. We were right across the aisle from Doug Batchelor's Amazing Facts booth, and so I remember we got a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people coming by. Several years later, we had been approved to go to Nashville to a teachers conference and educators general conference, educators conference. And we had been approved, everything was okay, and like the day or two before the conference, we got a notice that we had been uninvited and that we were no longer allowed to talk about families of LGBTQ people there. It was the same time that Deneen and Stephen were doing the film Seventh-day Adventists, and it was also being shown there in conjunction, off-site, but in conjunction with the conference that was going on there. And it was interesting because of the ban, we created this T-shirt, and that kind of says it all. Beware of Carol. She is a very dangerous woman because she talks about love. One of the buttons says there, let's love all our children. And the other one says, stop bullying in schools. And interestingly enough, and Carol is beautiful right there, we wore this T-shirt around, and everyone kind of avoided us like the plague. Because what do you say to someone, a sweet, innocent lady who had been a missionary, general conference official's wife for many, many years, and now she's talking about loving your children, and she gets mandates from the general conference, from you, Ted Wilson, to not love your children, to not approve of your children, not to listen to your children. Quite a sad day. I remember at one of the general conferences, could have been Atlanta, can't remember exactly which one. I know you remember, Ted, that she was up on the balcony, and she and some of the other women unfurled a banner talking about women's ordination and how important it was to treat the women in our church with respect and acknowledge their calling from God to also be ministers in the Adventist church. And fortunately, she wasn't arrested, but I think security came and asked them to stop and took them away. Good hot chocolate. So, yeah, a few years prior to that, and kind of doing this in reverse order, Carol wrote a book called My Son, Beloved Stranger. And because this was a taboo topic in the Adventist church, just like it is still today, Ted, you have a real problem saying the word gay or LGBTQIA+, and actually knowing and understanding what it means. But she had to write it under a pseudonym, Kate McLaughlin. This was actually Carol Grady, but in order to get the book published without having threats to her life and her existence as an Adventist, she had to publish it under a pseudonym by the Pacific Press. And the other fact is, in addition to getting the book published, one of the prerequisites that the Pacific Press, which is a general conference entity, I believe, she had to change one of the chapters. Her son, she wrote this about her gay son, her son converted to Catholicism and actually went into the priesthood because he didn't find any acceptance or love in the Adventist church for who he was, and no one wanted to talk about it. So he went into a monastery and converted to Catholicism. But in order to publish the book, because the Adventists are so anti-Catholic that they changed the facts, so we had a lie in order to get this book published. She had to change it to that he converted to Episcopalian, to the Episcopal faith, and became a pastor or a priest in the Episcopal Church. So Episcopal wasn't so bad because it wasn't Catholic, but it made all of us very sad that in order to share this story, we had to tell a falsehood, a lie, and that was a requirement from Ted Wilson from the General Conference and the Pacific Press at that time to get this word out. Well, a few years later, the book had been translated into German, into French, Spanish, I believe, into several languages, published by different publishing houses. She wrote an update to the book with the same title, but this time she actually used her real name as the author. And in there, she had it privately published, and she was able to write an epilogue and talk about the requirements that the church wanted her to do and forced her to do in order to publish the book. And she wrote, the following story, or the rest of the story about her son and his life and his journey. Since then, unfortunately, Carol has passed away last year. And if you go to the Kinship YouTube channel, you can find a memorial service there to her that we did. She was very beloved. She was not afraid of speaking out, and made the difference in the lives of many, many Adventists. Parents, families who have queer family members, either children, cousins, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, whatever. It just is very sad, though, that the church requires us to lie, to break the 10 Commandments, in order to tell the truth about LGBTQ things, which are not even in the 10 Commandments. The truth is that you're born with a sexual orientation, whatever that is. You might not know it at the age of awakening at 5 or 6 or whatever, sexual awakening. It may kick in later. Just any example, you don't know if you like a certain food until one day you hear about it, and it's like, oh, I think I like that food. Now, food is much less complicated than a sexual orientation, but the example is the same way. Sometimes you don't realize something until it just hits you like a brick, and so not everyone knows that they're LGBT or Q at an early age. So I was fortunate. I knew it when I was like 5, 6, before school started, and I just didn't know what the name was. And since then, now I've aged a few years and still speaking out. The church refuses to listen. And so, Ted, these are my weekly videos, Tuesdays with Ted, where we create a video for you. I know that you were very busy working hard against us and trying to keep us quiet, but that's not going to work. You created the Human Sexuality website that you talked about at the spring meeting, and I'm still going to get to that in an upcoming episode, because I think it's very poorly addresses the issue of LGBTQ. You give the old, not tried and true at all, but the old responses from before, when the church had no real clue what orientation was. By now, many years later, you should know what a sexual orientation is. And the old line that Coming Out Ministries tries to gaslight people with is like, we don't have a sexual orientation. We should be orientation should be to Jesus. That's a given. All Christians have an orientation towards Jesus and to do what Jesus, the example that he gave us, and to live a life like his. But that has nothing to do with our sexual orientation that we are born with, the chemicals, the just what's inside of our body, our brains. So, your website just dances around the truth of an orientation. So, just wanted to say, we don't have to be afraid of Carol. We don't have to bully people to get our message across. And so if you're listening to this for the first time, I hope you connect with SDA Kinship International. You can go to our website, sdakinship.org. Follow us online at SDA Kinship. I have some accounts as well that you can follow. And if you have more questions about us, please email us, info@sdakinship.org. And I or someone else on the board will be happy to respond to your questions with honest answers. And know that if you are a queer person with Adventist connections, current or former, that God loves you unconditionally. You don't have to change. You don't have to please your pastor. You don't have to please your parents. You just have to please God. And God is definitely pleased with you. He created you, and he said it was good. And if you haven't already read the book, My Son, Beloved Stranger, by Carol Grady, please, you can go online and pick one up, or I still have a few copies. If you email me, I can send you a copy for your reading, and it's also available online. I can give you the URL to read it online as well. So have a blessed week. Thank you for listening. Take another sip of your refreshment there. And subscribe to the SDA Kinship, Seventh-day Adventist Kinship YouTube link, and look for us for next week's episode. And I look forward to sharing and talking with you again. And Ted, I hope you have a great week too. This video is for you in particular. Everyone else can listen in as well and be blessed and profit from it. But Ted, the message is for you. You need to talk with SDA Kinship. Talk with normal queer Adventists, not those who are addicted to whatever or self-loathing, who had a bad childhood, etc., etc. Sure, those people exist and they need God's love and help as well. But there are a lot of us who had normal childhoods and are well-adjusted queer Adventists in spite of what you're trying to do to us. So thank you again, and everyone have a great week. Bye-bye.